All right, Love of the Links, episode 2 of season 2. We're back with Mr. Bob Baldassari. Bobby, how are you?
Mucho frio in southern Florida these days, but feels good. Feels refreshing.
Yeah, I kind of like that. I was wondering if you're the type of northerner transplant down here that likes the cold or dislikes the cold.
I love it.
Yeah, me too.
I
It,
miss
it,
it.
it gives some kind of change of season down here for just a little stretch.
Well, my friends back home in Boston, Massachusetts, New England are texting me videos, photos of 12 to 18 inches of snow, and
Hmm.
I miss a good snowstorm. It's kind of wicked fun. It's kind of
Yeah,
wicked tough with the shoveling, but yeah, I do miss that.
yeah. I don't miss that, but I miss the fall. That's what I miss of
Yeah.
upstate New York. So let's get rolling. A couple of fun events this week on tour, and then a team event, which we kind of talked about last episode, but a team event next week. So that's kind of where I wanted to start with the Hero World Challenge. And it seems like between the Hero and the President's Cup, we got guys medically withdrawing with injuries left and right, it seems like. But that's kind of where I wanted to start with at least the Hero. Um, it's Did they get World of Golf rankings for this? I was thinking about this and I didn't see it on the website.
I have to double check on that one. I know that some of them do, some don't. Some limited fields get them, and maybe it's not as equitable as the regular full fields. But that one's with Tiger involved. It's always gets a lot of eyeballs. Was reading something about the maybe the new normal for Jordan Spieth, that
Yeah.
he hasn't been as dominating as usual for some years. So it's an interesting. I think for the top players, this might be an interesting week to see how they come back from their breaks and they get back into competition.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the tee times for tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow they start Wednesday, and it's obviously for the limited field and his event. It's kind of who's who of who's been playing pretty strong of the last couple months, and that's where I wanted to start with this, and then as we get into the PNC father son. I just wanted to go through and pull out just a few names, not the entire field, and just kind of handicap the field and get your thoughts on it. And some of these folks obviously will be playing next week as well. But where I wanted to start most notably is a guy who was just subbed in by Captain Woods for next week, Mr. Fowler. What are your thoughts on Ricky? It's been kind of a no-show Ricky the last couple months. So.
Yeah, I guess he's been laying low, staying quiet, maybe working on his game.
Yeah.
I don't know. I get a feeling he's going to have a big year coming up. I really do. I think, I don't know. I just got a gut feeling. Can't explain it, but I think he's maybe the stars are aligning for him. Everybody's different. As you and I know, we spend a lot of time around kids in youth golf, and kids develop at different ages, and people do, and you hit different plateaus at different times. I just think he's going to have a pretty good year this year. I don't know, just can't explain it, but I think he's due.
Yeah, and what I was thinking about with Ricky is something I've thought about over the last couple of years with some of the other guys that kind of are in his circle, with Jordan, and who else hangs with those guys?
Justin Thomas.
Justin Thomas, and what I was thinking about is in your opinion, how does family life, because they're all recently engaged or recently married, children will probably be coming down the road. How does that affect things now versus, and as we kind of do some foreshadowing and talking about the father-son, how is it different now with these guys versus when Nicholas and Player and those guys were out on tour with families?
Yeah, it's a different time and place. I think some people, if they pour everything into it, body, mind, soul, they play better. And then when they get married and have kids, it could be a nice distraction. Other players, I've seen it flip.
Yep.
A little distracted in the single life, get married, boom, they get focused. Back to Raymond Floyd, bachelor guy out there, and He got married in his career, really get into a different way, shape, or form. Focus started always at one, but I mean, just I think of Raymond as one guy that changed it up once you get married. I think society today it's a little bit different. You're very very focused on the kids even more than when you and I were growing up. I mean, so I think it can help some players. I mean, some players it's not the end of the world if they're not going to win a lot of golf tournaments. They want to stay home. It's funny. Jack Nicklaus, the only one that I can recall ever had that rule 2 weeks away from home. That was it. You don't hear anybody talk about that on the one hand, but it's interesting to see. I don't know, just interesting to see how it affects different people.
And you can't bring this topic up without talking about Tiger and kind of the epiphany that, at least from looking from afar, that he's kind of had. Injuries kind of drove that. Some questionable things that happened, in years past kind of have driven this too. But I really, truly feel that he is a much different person now. He's in a much different place. And I don't think that the injury or the past transgressions are the reason for that. I think it's family. I think he's very truthful when he talks about his children. And I think that's kind of what's brought him to rebound.
Yeah, it's such a fine line out there. I mean, it's a wicked fine line. And all you do is need a little bit of doubt about your golf swing physically, mentally, losing confidence, or as I'm aware of players on the home front. If something's not right on the home front, that's weighing on your mind. Great. That makes a big, big difference. I think back, my first head pro job was at a Gary Player course. Gary came out to visit us 4 times in 3 years. Got to know him a little bit, shared some amazing, amazing stories. He came out with this one club, the Par Saver, and he said to me, "Bobby, if I had this club when I was your age, I would have won 3 more majors." And I said, "Geez, Gary, I'm working on my first major, so maybe I should give that club a try." But I remember him telling me that he traveled with his kids, and if he did not finish in the top 3, he was losing a lot of money because he had his wife, his kids, travel. That's a lot of pressure. It's obviously different these days, but when Dean Beeman came into the PGA Tour, he brought the tour as a commissioner from station wagons to jets.
Yeah,
so it is a little bit different traveling today, but I think if you have a comfortable family life, that makes a big difference on the course.
Do you think the fact that everything's not everything, but a bulk of what these guys do off the course is so much more in the spotlight than it was in past generations with social media? And a second part to that question is, at least in my opinion, I feel like the guys that really do embrace the social media tend to be able to handle everything a little bit better. At least that's my take. What do you think about that?
You can't avoid social media these days,
No.
that's for sure. I guess it used to be if you were a bad interview in the press tent afterwards. Talk to Jeff Babineau. Babs will tell you some great stories, and some of the guys out there that in the old days, it was just, behind the scenes, that was a tough interview. Now, I think it does make a difference if you embrace it. Generationally, the younger guys have done it. I don't know how many on the Champions Tour off the top of my head really do a lot there, but it can definitely help your fan base. I think it's a great way to engage and create a bigger fan base for the game of golf, for sure.
Yeah, and what you just said is kind of alluding to what we're going to get towards the second half of the show. Is I wanted to talk about golf, not necessarily the game itself, but the entertainment value that it has, and it's much different than it's been in years past, and it has to. I mean, everything evolves. I think golf has historically been slow to evolve and slow to change. But I really think within the last couple of years, and we'll save more of this for our guest that's going to be on a little bit later, but I feel like, with the social media and with golf being, or not being, with having a higher entertainment value, I think that kind of changes things up. It's the dynamics of it for tour pros as well.
It's definitely a game that has wonderful traditions and history, but those wonderful traditions and history hold it back.
Yeah.
You got to be careful about that. I remember in my lifetime being in this golf shop, working for my dad. Dad was a 53-year member of the PGA. I remember when the metalwood came out and everybody said, well, that's a fad. I remember when Ashworth came out with the first soft collars and everybody said,
Yeah.
what are you kidding me? Soft spikes, when that came, that was me. September 1st, 1996, we instituted soft spikes at my club in Ocean City, Maryland. My elbow was still sore from all the changing out the, everybody said, well, there's so many things that look like a fad, but they end up being good for the game. And it is, when I was at PGA Village, I was the general manager up there, and I used to love to look in the History Center and the Museum of Golf, and there's old magazines that show the people are quoted in there from the 1930s, 1941, that the game was going to be harmed because people are not playing golf with a jacket and a tie.
Yeah.
So, dress codes change, the game has to change and evolve, and some things are always good to get a fresh perspective.
And it's interesting, the two events that we're speaking about, early on in this episode. It's a very generational gap between the two different events, but at the same time, I think it's kind of capturing what we're talking about right now, the entertainment value of things. And you talk about the younger guys being good at this and getting out there and showing some personality. But I saw a post from Mr. Nicholas as he and Mr. Trevino were celebrating his birthday the last couple days. And I think Jack has really done, whether it's him or his team or a combination, I think he's really led that charge of the social media for that generation.
Yeah, he does some really, really, really nice things. I mean, I like a lot of the posts he does. There's some of the guys at that generation, they start to embrace it, and it's a good thing. It gets people to know them, and when you get to know somebody, you really can gravitate to them versus just the veneer that's on when they're on the stage on the tour, and they have to be focused. Guys like Henrik Stenson and some of these other guys that off the course, they're wicked funny. They're just they're just different, and there could be other players in other sports, but once they're on the playing field, they're focused. I'm playing for a lot of money, but it's nice when they can, to me, engage with the fan base or grow some fans like that, and people get to know you.
Yeah, and again, that's truly has helped guys like him or Ian Poulter. When I was working at the Golf Academy America, Poulter used to have an event at Lake Nona where he would need some help. It was for the watch company, one of his sponsors, and he'd need help from the students of the Golf Academy, and they go over and caddy and for caddy and do some other stuff. And these were executives at bigger companies and some of the touring pros, and the guys from the Golf Academy couldn't get over how funny, how generous, just how down to earth a lot of these guys were. And Stenson was one of them. Remember Beef Johnson? Obviously, he's somebody that's got the personality that you look for. But at the same time, this just came to mind, the personal struggles that we all go through. Andrew Johnston really was in the limelight with that about a year ago, or maybe 6 months ago, about going through some challenges when he was thrust into the limelight pretty quick. And that's a really good example of how, if these guys embrace this and talk to the fan base, how it can really humanize them and make people feel one way or the other about them.
Yeah, it's a big thing for many years now in business as well, called vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
And you can show vulnerability and certainly empathy, but when you open yourself up like that, I think people gravitate to you. It can work in the corporate setting, certainly can work in that regard. And there's been some others I think it's starting to catch on. The number one TED Talk out there, if you're into TED Talks, number one has to do with vulnerability. So it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and one of my favorite shows on TV has to do with that thing, the corporate undercover boss. You see that a lot, and sometimes the people don't have that in their nature, but by doing this exercise, and a lot of it's made for TV, but I do think it's a game changer a lot of times for these individuals.
No doubt.
So the Hero World Challenge starts, coverage starts tomorrow on the Golf Channel. They go through Saturday, limited field, tee times, leading off at 10:40 with Justin Rose and John Rahm. That's a great twosome to lead things off. But as you go through the list here, there's not a bad twosome. The final group, at least on Wednesday, is Stenson and Jordan Spieth. Let's switch gears to the PNC father-son. This is a really fun event. I did a clinic expo a couple years back, did a junior clinic right before the tournament, and watching these guys, watching Nicholas interact with the crowd, it's really cool to see Gary Players playing this year, I believe with his daughter, I believe. Tom Watson's playing. You know, some sad news came out this week about the loss of his wife, her battle with cancer. But just another, you talk about nice guys, those three guys, and on the website for the event, it says the GOATs, and basically they are Player, Nicholas, and Watson. And that's your big three now with the passing of Arnie. Arnie will always be part of that, but these are the guys getting things going in Augusta, and it's a big deal for the PNC.
Yeah, it sure is. And I believe Annika's Sorenstam is playing.
So playing.
I think they might have to rename that father-son to parent-child or something.
Yep.
But that's good to see. I'm glad they're growing it. Their mindset is growing. They're organized for that. This season we're in now, it used to be called the silly season. The skins game started that. Different evolution, different ideas that come up, different formats. I think it's always been a nice breather, a nice break, because again, to my earlier point, you get some players that drop the guard a little bit. They smile. They can kibitz out there. They not everybody's going to be Chichi Rodriguez every time, but
yeah,
I think you do see more genuine openness. I like these events. Sometimes I can go overboard. There's too many, but I like the idea that we have some of these.
Yeah, and like you said, we had talked about this a little bit on the last show. It needs to be a balance, definitely, but I think these things are good for, again, alluding to what we're going to talk about in a few minutes here, the entertainment value of thing and bringing in more people to the game. I think like things like this is a good starting point for some folks that might be on the fence. Looking real quick at the field here, some interesting pairings. John Daly with Little John, who showed some game the last couple years. Little John, chip off the old block there. David Duval playing with his son. We got Jim Furyk's playing with his dad. I'm looking at the field. Besides Annika, that's the only father-son or father-daughter pairing. But you look at some of these other names. Like I remember a few years ago when Vijay Singh's son played one year and then played the next year, and it's like he grew 2 feet or something. The kid's big like dad, and he hits the ball a mile. So my question for you is, one, have you been to this event? And two, who's going to win this week? Some of the older guys got a chance?
I think Annika wins. I think she comes right out of the blocks and does well. It's going to be. I'd have to study that list a little more, but I thought she would do really well. I got to play with my dad in a lot of tournaments. We're both being PGA pros, but me as a kid growing up, pro-ams, pro members, things like that. So unbelievable, best memories ever. It's a real special thing. I played with my dad or my son in some of the pro junior events. The first time I took him to a pro junior event in the Mid-Atlantic PGA, we got on the first tee and he looks around and he's looking around and I say, "Hey, buddy, what are you doing?" He goes, "Well, we're all the people." And I said, "What do you mean we're all the people?" Because he's only seen golf on TV, or that was his first big tournament. So, a lot of great memories. And, interestingly enough, Mike Furyk, quick story on him. He was my Tommy Armour rep at my first head pro job in Ocean City, Maryland. And after about a good year and a half, he said, "Hey, I don't think I might be back next year because my son's going after the tour qualifying school. I'm going to be his manager." And I'm thinking, there's a lot of good sticks out there, right? There's a lot of good players. Good luck, And so Jim Furyk's had a pretty good career.
And the only coach I believe he's ever had was Dad.
We used to think Mike should get the Teacher of the Year award because he didn't change Jim's swing at all. And I told that story to Jim one time, and he laughed. He's like, Yeah, it's good they kept me with the swing the way it was. Just nice and natural.
Yeah,
Confident.
lot to be said about that. We had been cookie cutter. We had this phase for maybe a decade or a little bit more of cookie cutter swings, but you're starting to see personality come out and uniqueness, which was kind of the hallmark of, you know, the era of Nicholas, and you think of Johnny Miller and some of those very unique swings. Everything's cyclical, and I think we're kind of there with golf, with the only exception being, you know, we're starting to slowly embrace, like we had said earlier, some of the things we need to draw people into the game. So before it looks like we're a couple minutes away from our guest coming in. There he is, right on cue. I'm gonna let Bobby introduce our guest, because you guys have a little bit of a history, and you brought a nice prop in to introduce this gentleman. So Bob, why don't you start with that?
All right. Well, it's my pleasure, privilege, and honor. I got to know this gentleman, oh boy, a while ago when I was up at PGA Village, and he can hit the ball wicked far, as we would say. So I'm sure he wants to give me lots of credit for how far he can hit it. That's a complete joke. But yeah, he came into the game of golf. I'm going to let my friend here explain how he got into the game, because it's really, really fascinating. I think it speaks to long-term athletic development as well, playing other sports,
Yep.
and using your own unique way to get into the sport. But this is a little gift he gave me. We're talking about Maurice Allen, Mighty Mo. And this is Maurice, if you can see some of that there. It's him in action. And he gave me this some years ago when maybe I can see that.
That is cool.
Guinness World Record, fastest, says fastest golf drive achieved by Maurice Allen, USA, up in Orlando, back in 2012. So our pleasure to bring in Mr. Maurice Allen. Hey, Mighty Mo.
Hey, what's going on, Smooth Bobby B? How's life treating you?
Things are good. We're very privileged to have you here with us. I hope you're doing well and you're feeling ready to conquer the world again with your world records and winning your long drive competitions.
That's the goal. That is definitely the goal for sure.
But I think everybody might be interested what you do off. I mean, you're amazing what you do long drive, but you have changed lives with what you do off the field. Things you've done, charities you've created, young lives you've changed, and that's become as powerful as anything to what you've done. I think in the time we've been together, and that was what you told me way years ago. You said, I want to win the world long drive only because I want to use it as a platform to make a difference in people's lives.
Yeah, I mean, most definitely. From a person who did not play traditional golf, or I didn't grow up playing junior golf, high school golf, any of that stuff, I think that I've been, in a sense, it's awkward, but I think that I've gotten more from the game than I deserve in certain aspects. And then in other aspects, I feel like I haven't gotten what I deserved, which is funny. But I've also been blessed enough with the opportunity to see the world and travel, doing something that I didn't even know existed probably 10 years ago now at this point. So it's just a way of me trying to give back not only to people but to the game. A lot of people have put a lot of their hard-earned, time, work, money, prayers, thoughts, things like that into helping me become the individual that I am. So a lot of times in life, even if somebody gives you, let's say it's $15, and that $15 was what you needed at that amount of time, and it helped you with an opportunity to do much better for yourself. Even if you gave a person those $15 back, it still doesn't repay exactly how significant those $15 were to you. So the easiest way to repay people who've helped you, other than showing your gratitude and obviously saying thank you, is to really go back and help other people.
Good, Brendon.
Yeah, Maurice, this is Brendon. And one, we appreciate you coming on the show. And two, my first question is how does a kid from Pine Hills, Florida, find his way onto the big stage, doing his best 2 claps and a Ric Flair, bombing it out there? How did that journey start? And are you surprised about how quickly this rise to fame came?
Well, I guess it started, my dad tried to get me to play golf as a kid. I wasn't interested in it. Golf was not cool. As you get older, cool changes. Your definition of cool definitely changes. So I see golf for the beauty of what it is. I'm not certain that many juniors can see that. There's something that happens to you as far as when you get older, you get wiser, and your appreciation for life and what life is really all about actually happens. As far as a rise, I don't think it was quick. You hear it in the music industry all the time that nobody becomes successful overnight. That's definitely the case with me. I think, I quote unquote broke out in the main stage in 2017, but back in 2012, I was doing, the PGA championships, and they were talking about me on TNT, but nobody was really listening. Nobody was really paying attention at that state. And then it just happened to come about 2017 with the whole Ric Flair thing, and that took off to a whole nother level. But it definitely didn't happen overnight. And was I surprised? I guess kind of sort of, because, the things that I achieved, especially throughout that entire time frame in long drive, honestly did not exist as far as the notoriety and things like that. It wasn't something that was possible at that time frame. So that part was definitely something that was surprising.
Yeah, and so the timing really was good for you.
Yeah, the timing was interesting, between that and then Ric Flair getting sick and him being, the intro during the PGA championships, and they did the 30 for 30, and being a part of that whole craze, and then obviously in pop culture, people started to referring to Ric Flair, and he had a song, and then he was in these videos and left, right, and center. So I think from that part, it was definitely perfect timing on that end. But yeah, from that stance, that was kind of cool. But the whole Ric Flair thing was much bigger than I ever intended for it to be or ever thought it could be.
Hey, Mighty Mo, I remember some years ago we were together, and I think back a lot of fun stories I've shared with you. Maurice wanted to go for his PGA of America membership and thought to give the PAT a try. So he goes the first time, and you came back and you said, yeah, I didn't play as well, kind of sprayed a few drives. And I said, Maurice, you hit your 7-iron like 275 yards. Do me a favor, go to the PAT, only bring a 7-iron down to a putter. I believe you did that, and you shot like a couple of low 70s. And
yeah, I was one stroke off the low medalist because I decided to pull my driver out on the 18th hole. And I was like, I'm just going for broke. It's a par 5. But still ended up, I think I went 70, 71, 73, something like that. So, yeah, played pretty well.
I love that. For anybody listening, do not get in a long drive contest with Maurice when he's holding his pitching wedge. It's a trick. You will not win. I've seen him do this to people, but and then it was neat. We were together in St. Louis at the senior championship. I'll never forget at that Boys and Girls Club, and just the touching way you connected with those kids. They could really just feel you so genuine and authentic, and that's when I knew you were going to do more with this long drive stuff, just the way you could connect with these kids. And that was a pretty powerful presentation you did in St. Louis with those kids that year.
Yeah, St. Louis was a lot of fun. St. Louis was definitely an eye-opening situation. When you really look at it, golf is a game that, I know everybody's on the whole diversity and inclusion thing right now, but the truth of the matter is, you can't include people who don't have access. It's impossible. It's almost like you can't include people who don't know that something exists. And a lot of times, a lot of minorities don't even know that the game exists. Obviously, yeah, people know who Tiger Woods is, but, it's just like saying, hey, well, you know who Bobby Fischer is. Do you play chess? No, I don't play chess, but I know who Bobby Fischer is. It's the same type of deal. So it's definitely different. And I think that was one of the big things that kind of just changed my whole mode and my goal towards where this game could go, or at least the part that I was going to play in it.
Yeah, I mean, when you and I were in St. Louis, we're downtown. It's a tough area, and they're looking at your golf clubs and saying, "I've never seen these. I've never held them." And so you're right. It's one thing to to do something. As I talk about this a lot, it's fine enough to do an exposure event, but you're right. How do we take those kids from inner city St. Louis, get them to a golf course, really get them to get hooked on the game, get them access? I mean, that's a tough part.
Oh yeah, most definitely. That's a big part. I think a lot of people in day-to-day living, I don't think people understand the significance of grass or of trees. If you're in an area that's a concrete jungle, place that doesn't have a lot of just simple, basic nature, just grass, weeds, trees, flowers, things of that nature that you really take for granted on a golf course, or anybody who plays golf. You don't really think about grass as a commodity at all. You don't see it as a luxury. You're just like, it's grass. What do you mean? You hit a ball, take a divot, you fill it with sand, and you keep it moving. But there are a lot of people who don't have the luxury of seeing grass on the regular. They don't get to go and play in the yard. They don't have a lawn. They don't get to tear up grass like we do every single day when we're playing golf. It's just different. It's definitely a different thought process. It's a different view, a different way of looking at life.
Yeah, Maurice, I've got two comments, and then I wanted to get your take on this. I had the privilege of when the Boys and Girls Club PGA program was a pilot program, of being one of the first professionals in the PGA to kind of roll that out. And we did it up in Sanford at the Boys and Girls Club up there. And it was such an eye-opening experience for me, because, to walk in there and be able to bring this to these kids, like you said, that have never experienced this. Some have never seen a golf club. But what really struck me is when we had the last day of the program, we took them out to the golf course. We took them up to Legacy Club, Aliqua Lakes, and
Aliqua. Yep.
We're driving around in the carts, and there's a lot of deer up at that golf course, and they're running across the fairways, and the kids were just jaws dropped. And what is potentially possible through this game it's so transcending, and that, and you're a great ambassador for that. And my second comment, and then I'll get your take on this, is when I was the golf professional at Winter Park, the 9-hole course, Dubstred was being renovated. So Dr. Dorsey's group, and I know you have an intimate connection with his group, they came over to Winter Park when Dubstred was closed down. And I promise you, I've never seen a youth group that was more focused, more disciplined, more respectful than the kids in Dr. Dorsey's Orlando Minority Youth Golf Association. So I wanted to get some comments from you on your connection with him and what he does.
Yeah, I mean, Doc's my coach. That's my swing coach. That's my everything involving golf. People have asked me before, why don't I go see a PGA pro and things like that? I know I've heard, why don't I go see a golf professional before? And I was like, well, he's a dentist. Last time I checked, that's a professional of some sort. That's a profession. So he's definitely a professional. As far as golf is concerned, he definitely knows more than anybody I've ever come across about the golf swing. He enjoys reading and learning about the swing. And so with him, I mean, I literally credit everything that I've done on the golf course and off the golf course in the last few years to just being around him, being in his presence, getting to know him as a person. It changed my entire life, which is cool,
Yeah.
When you think about it from that stance. I always tell him that he's a dinosaur because, they don't make many like him.
No.
I'm sad enough to say when he does go, whenever that day may be, I highly doubt there'll be another one like him. He's a very selfless person. His vision is on a whole nother level. He's a very outside the box type person, but I think that's what it takes to promote change. You know, you can't be inside the box and promote change of any kind in this world. I think that's what makes a difference. You know, people think that change is something that happens easy, but, you know, honestly, it's one of those things where the best things for you probably hurt the most. And so with Doc, I mean, we went through a lot of growing pains in the beginning, but I also had to trust him and understand that, hey, you know, he's not telling me this because he's bored or because he has nothing else better to do with his day. So he's actually trying to help me. And I think that's what you see when you look at his program. And I don't try to really compare it to other programs because I don't know anything about other programs, junior programs. I know that Doc, from the time you walk into his doors, he sets the tone and commands a level of respect for you as an individual, for him as an instructor, for the game as a whole, and for the facilities that they visit and utilize. And I don't know what other instructors do. I have no clue. I don't know what they do with other youth programs, but I think when you set that tone from the moment you walk in, it shows, like you said, when they go to Winter Park 9 or anywhere else. You can tell an OMYGA kid versus any other youth kid just because he understands and he's let everybody know when you walk away from him, people expect you to act a certain way based on the program that you came from. You know, he almost has that Ivy League effect. You know, when you have somebody who's gone to an Ivy League school, they understand that there's a certain expectation by saying you're a Harvard or Princeton grad. You know, it just has a certain regalness to it, and same thing with Doc's program.
Yeah, and I think from the standpoint of diversity inclusion, and it is a big topic in the industry right now, I think we can't go forward without having guys from the community like him or like you that looks like these kids and grows up in the community that these kids do. It's so important. So hats off to you, man, for not only what you've done for the entertainment value of the game, but what you've done as a role model for these kids.
Oh, yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. You know, I think the biggest issue that we have in golf right now is, you know, nobody has tried to market to the minority at all. There are no minorities that are the face of any brand. And, you know, I don't include Tiger Woods because that's God complex. When you think about it, you know, you can't say, oh, well, we've got Tiger Woods as the face of Bridgestone or Nike or whatever. That doesn't count. I mean, Tiger Woods could be purple, and with the resume he has, he'd be the face of whatever it is. But, you know, when you look at a Harold Varner or a Jonathan Viegas and guys like that who have a darker complexion, they're not on the forefront of anything regardless of how they play. And unfortunately, that's the sad thing in this sport. And it at some point, I hope it changes. You know, I don't know. You boil back to that access comment. You know, how many minorities have access to the game? Well, if you look at I'd say the 30 and up crowd, quite a few of them, but there's no representation. So I think the biggest problem that you run into is how can you motivate or get kids to look up to somebody or call them their hero when they have no one that looks like them to do so. You know, I know growing up when I played baseball, two people I looked up to every single time I turned around was Ricky Henderson and Ken Griffey Jr. I mean, there were tons of them out there. There was Kirby Puckett, and I can go down the list of guys, but, you know, it was possible. I saw it. It was on TV. These guys were always in the limelight. Obviously, Ricky Henderson at one point was absolutely the man. You know, a lot of people looked at Major League, that whole Major League and 1 and Major League 2 series and looked at Wesley Snipes' character and kind of, you know, made a resemblance of that and Ricky Henderson. And it was just something that you saw, but unfortunately in golf, there's nothing like that. There's no example of that. And, you know, that's something that definitely needs to change. If you're going to do inclusion, you have to do it all the way. And that starts with sponsorship of professional athletes who have the resume to be sponsored, and things of that nature. And I think ultimately that turns over into finding new customers and new consumers. You know, you find more minority consumers because people say, hey, these companies are supporting people that look like us. We need to support them as well. And we need to support them big time. And I think hopefully that's on the I guess, on the cusp, and hopefully that part changes in the next couple of years.
Yeah, what you've done, Maurice, has been, certainly nothing short of remarkable in many regards with the odds you had to overcome. So definitely an inspiration to me and a lot of others. And um, I don't know what you're going to do when you're topping, hitting a drive over Niagara Falls like you did. That was
Yeah,
just blowing my mind. But I'm
well, I
not
mean,
going
I even look at that. That situation hurt. If I had been anybody else, that would have been all over the place, and that situation with Niagara Falls almost got thrown under the bridge, or thrown under the falls at least. It didn't really get any real golf media attention. It was like a small blurb, a blimp on the radar, just be like whoop, and then it kept going. Especially when a few years ago it was deemed as impossible. I'm not saying I was the only person who could have achieved it, but the fact that it was achieved, it just kind of got swept under the rug. And that goes back to the whole diversity and inclusion part as well. I think if I had been any of the other lone drivers out there, it would have turned into a big, huge deal. Good Morning America, CNN, so on and so forth. But because it was me, it was just like, all right, we'll say it, but not really. And that kind of sucks.
Yeah, I kind of thought the same thing when I was watching it on Instagram. And hats off to Scratch Golf too. Those guys do a lot.
Oh yeah, they do absolutely amazing stuff. Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that wasn't even my idea. That was Scratch's idea. Scratch and Ace, they came up with that, and it was absolutely perfect. I spent the entire week we were there scared to death that I wasn't going to clear it, just because I knew from a physics standpoint how hard it was to hit the ball through the mist, over the mist, into the wind, blah, 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 all those other factors. And I was like, oh, man, if I don't clear this, yeah, I'm going to end up in a world of hurt because of it. But, I mean, then to actually achieve it, we did that. I think we taped that thing in, it was right after Memorial Day, believe it or not. So I sat on it for like 2 months knowing that I had done it. And then when it came out, it was like, oh, that's it. Which was terrible. I mean, but, it is what it is.
Well, you keep knocking down walls, so that's another wall to knock down, but I know it's going to make a difference.
Yeah, I mean, I've come to the realization in my career, I'll probably be one of those guys when they look back at it in X number of years, they may acknowledge the greatness that I brought to the game, or something different and changing the game. And that's just a part of what you have to accept as an athlete. You'd like to get the limelight and the love when it's happening, but to know that I've changed definitely the sport of long drive significantly, and hopefully I'm introducing more people into the game of golf. That's got to be the one thing that gives me a little bit of peace at the moment, even if I don't get the other stuff.
Yeah, Maurice, just my last question is, what's up next for you? What do you got on the schedule as we move into 2020?
Lots of training, get myself together, get ready to shock the world. And I'll just leave it at that. I like when there's less talk and more action. So yeah, just get ready to shock the world.
Well, if you want to check out more on Maurice Allen, you can go to his website, mauriceallen360.com. You got anything you want to plug, my friend?
Yeah, all my social media sites are Maurice Allen 360. I've got a foundation. We're going to do some stuff here in the next couple of months. We're going to do a drive, which is funny. But we're getting people to donate to the American Cancer Society as well as my scholarship fund. So be on the lookout for that. If anybody is looking for a tax write-off, we're giving out scholarships, and we are definitely helping try to raise a cure for cancer, which is a big thing as well for me. But that's it, and then just stay tuned and turn your TVs on, because I'll be on there soon.
Nice.
Can't wait to see you, Mighty Mo.
Appreciate your time, sir.
Oh, thank you guys so much, and I hope you all have a good rest of the week and hopefully get some golf in.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I'll talk to you guys later.
Thank you.
You got it, Mo.
Thanks.
Yeah, what a classy guy, Bob. I know that you've known him for a while, and what did it spring from that exhibition that he did with the PGA, or did you guys go back a little bit further than that?
Yeah, we first met at PGA Village, I guess in 2010 or so, 29, and we had an event, and I knew Maurice's dad, Jesse, and Jesse said, "Hey, my son's really doing pretty well at this golf thing and the long drive." And so I said, "Well, let's bring him down and have him do an exhibition." And you could just tell he had the talent, obviously physically, to hit it far, but you could see the beginning of how he presents and how he could connect with people. It's very genuine, and I just knew he was going to go on to big things.
Yeah, and his last comment about the whole driving it over the falls, I did. I kind of felt the same way, that should have got a lot more press than it did, because I remember when John Daly tried it, and it was all over the place. And we've made progress, and it's easy for you and I to say that, but for someone from that community, there's still a lot of work to do. And I don't think we have, with all efforts that the PGA and others in the industry have put in, I think we still have got some work to do.
Yeah, it's still ways to go. It's always step forward, a step back. Sometimes there's a little bit of a treading water.
Yeah.
But Maurice is right. It's going to be nice when you can see the Tony Finau's or Harold Varner to get out there in front of more people on a sponsorship level and be featured. And so it's come a ways, but it's got a long way to go.
Yeah. So Bob, thanks for lining that up and getting him on there. He was a good guest, and I'm looking forward, and as I'm sure you are, to getting a couple more guests as we go forward and talking about all corners of the game. That's going to wrap it up for this edition. Like I said in our first episode of the new season, we don't have a set schedule. We get these things rolled out as we can. The hope is to have something come out weekly, but there's no guarantees on that. And as you saw, we're going to talk about all things that have to do with this game that the both of us love, and a lot of the folks that are listening absolutely love as well. So, Bob, any last thoughts?
Yeah, well, one thing I'm about to say is, we want to bring up a lot of things to talk about, and sometimes it'll be uncomfortable, but out of an uncomfortable spot, then you pull it to start things, and it gets out in the open, and then you can have change. If it's hidden too far, as simple as silly as a metalwood or a soft collared shirt or a spikes, or with what Maurice is doing to try to get more people of color and minorities into the game. You got to talk about it. You got to get it out in the open, and it gets uncomfortable, but then you get past that, and then you can really make some change.
Yeah, for sure. And it's important to have guys like him being the face of this movement. So that's it for this edition of Love of the Links. Check us out on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube. We'll get this video portion put up on YouTube fairly quick. The recording that goes on all the podcasts, the various outlets, takes a little bit longer to slice and dice and get up there. We are on iHeartRadio now, so for that. I can't do the Ric Flair as good as our last guest.
You should have had him do it, yeah.
But we're slowly but surely starting to hit all those pockets where people go to check out podcasts. So once again, Bob, thank you for your time. Looking forward to our next episode, and happy holidays to everyone.
Sounds great. Thanks, BE. Keep in the fairway.
You too.